Ladies and gentlemen, we're halfway through February, and I just today realized that I have not yet made a What I Watched in January video. So therefore, this is going to be a very low effort video. This is going to be a very quick video. Let's get right into this! Started off on a low note with the most Netflix movie maybe of all time. I watched Bright. I didn't really enjoy it. I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. Elves do a whole lot of flips, though, so that was kind of cool. Next up, I watched Don't Move, and while this was still a kind of Netflix-y movie, in that it wasn't great, and the characters kind of sort of explain every single little thing that's happening, it was still good. It was still a fun time. I would say that, unlike Bright, I actually enjoyed this and would probably watch it again. Probably 6 out of 10. Then I watched The Adam Project, and this was cute. It was good. It was perfectly serviceable. It was actually surprisingly sweet a time or two, which is interesting because Ryan Reynolds is in it, and I don't mean that as an insult, but generally speaking, Ryan Reynolds isn't in particularly thought-provoking movies as much nowadays as he used. But I don't know. I haven't seen any old Ryan Reynolds movies. Anyways, this was good. It was... Again, they do the Netflix thing of explaining things to you very directly a little bit too much, but it was still good. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Then I watched Land of Bad, and I could say a decent bit about this film, except for one simple thing. I forgot most of what happens in it, other than the thing that sticks out in my mind the most about this movie is someone is like killed with a rock, and then they hard cut to Russell Crowe shopping for vegan cheese. Six out of 10 film. Dune Part 2. I could say a whole lot about it, but I'm planning on making a full-length video on specifically Part 2, but Dune as well. 8 out of 10 film for me personally. I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's a 10 like a lot of people do. Then I watched The Watchers, kinda ironic, and I'm not gonna lie, this doesn't hold up at all on a second watch. It's a good, decent mystery that unravels fairly quickly on the first watching, and then on the second watching, it just had very, very little sauce. On the second watching, I could immediately pick it apart, and as much as I was trying not to immediately pick it apart, it happened regardless. Then I watched Homestead, and I'm not gonna lie, I am the most conflicted about this movie that I think maybe I've ever been about a movie. If you want to know why, you can go watch the video up there, I think. I'll leave the card for that to tell you a bit more of my thoughts about this movie. I didn't give it a number rating, not because it was that bad, but because I was extremely conflicted, and I didn't give it a star rating on Letterboxd either, because yet again, I was very conflicted. So, you know, it's not that I give it 0 stars, it's that, or a 0 out of 10, it's that I didn't know how to rate it, and it broke me for a day or two. Then I watched The 6 888, and I'm not gonna lie, the story is good, right? It's an important story that needs to be told, but holy crud, is the first, like, 2 hours. How long is this movie? I think it's right around 2 hours. Okay, so not the first 2 hours, but everything but the last 20 minutes is so incredibly boring. And that seems a little mean considering the subject matter, but I can't sugarcoat it. It's just directed in a way that it's like, oh, there's very, very little interesting things that happen up until the last 20 minutes. And the last 20 minutes is very good. The last 20 minutes is what redeemed this movie for me and got it a like, because up to the last 20 minutes, I was like, oh, this is very formulaic. This is very, they're doing nothing really different from any other movie, story aside, because, obviously, if you've seen the movie, the story is very different than what had been happening up to that point. But I give it a 6.5 out of 10 overall, just because the last 20 minutes pulled it up like a whole point and a half. The last 20 minutes make the movie worth watching. Then I watched Horizon, an American Saga. It's truly no wonder how Kevin Costner wasn't able to secure funding for parts 3 and 4. That feels really mean to say, but this had nothing going for it. Well, that's not entirely true. The cinematography, the lighting, and the setting was very, very cool, very, very good. But it feels like I've seen this movie before. It feels like I've seen this movie in every Western that I've ever seen before, which I would like to clarify. I like Westerns. So if you see my Letterboxd rating of 3 stars and notice that I didn't leave a like on it, that's because I would not rewatch this. Because it's 3 hours long. It's confusing. It's edited confusingly. And anyways. Furiosa, I give this one an 8.5. Full video coming soon. Godzilla Minus One, then. I had been wanting to see this for a while, and I can say, I'm glad that I did. It was very enjoyable. It was a very good, very fun time. I'll probably watch it again sometime later this year, maybe early next year, something like that. It was good. It was entertaining. I liked it. Then I watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I really want to make a video breaking down how this is a horror movie instead of a kid's movie, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. 8.5 out of 10. Then I watched Spiderhead, specifically because this is from the director of Top Gun Maverick, and he has F1 coming out this summer, and I was like, oh yeah, I should watch some of his other filmography, and it was good. I think for a Netflix film, for a Netflix original, because I believe this was a Netflix original, it's very good. Like, they surprisingly do not a whole garbage load of exposition, which Netflix movies are, in my eyes, almost famous for now. There's still a chunk or two of exposition here or there, but it's good. I enjoyed it. Would I rewatch it? Maybe. Potentially. It's got some cool ideas, but I wish the ideas were fleshed out a bit more. Then I watched The Revenant. I had no expectations going into this, and I really, really enjoyed it. 8 out of 10 for me personally. Then I watched The Visit, and goodness gracious, if you didn't think old people were creepy already, you should watch this movie. Holy crap, I enjoyed it, I would rewatch it, and I would give it a 7 out of 10. Then I rewatched Murder on the Orient Express, and I swear, up to the last 30 minutes of this movie, I was literally in my head going, this isn't quite as good as I remember. This is, this is not quite as hard-hitting. And then the last 30 minutes happened, and I was like, I forgot that this movie has the sauce. Like, it is a very, very impactful last 30 minutes, and I think it forces you to ask some good questions. Now, I will go ahead and clarify, I have some nostalgia related to this film, okay? Our book club watched this movie as a book club and had some 10 out of 10 discussion after the movie, because this movie makes you ask a lot of really, really good questions. It's a kind of insightful into human psychology movie, so I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I saw it again. I probably won't see it again for several years, but I am very glad that I rewatched it. 8 out of 10. Then I watched Hundreds of Beavers. This is good. I'm gonna give the textbook definition of what this movie is. This is Looney Tunes, but live action and no words. It is entertaining. It's a little dumb. It's annoyingly repetitive a place or two. I know some people like the annoyingly repetitive. I personally did not. But I would still say that I enjoyed this, although I doubt that I would ever really watch it again. 7 out of 10. Then I watched Blue Beetle, and made me a little sad on my second watching of this movie, because this is only the second time I've ever seen this movie, I liked it, but I understand exactly why a lot of people did not like it. I understand why a lot of people were rating it 4 or 5 out of 10. And that is because it is very basic. It does almost nothing new that you haven't seen before, which is a shame, because Blue Beetle is a really interesting character with a really cool and interesting background that, aside from the family sharing the occasional story, we're not really given much information on his background. It's just like, bam, movie starts, we learn almost nothing new about Jaime by the end of the movie. I still enjoyed it. That's not saying I did not enjoy it, but I can understand why a lot of people had superhero fatigue, and why I'd say still do have superhero fatigue, because this is nothing new. This is very, very formulaic, and when you make repeatedly formulaic movies constantly, people are eventually going to get tired of them. So I still enjoyed this, though. 6.5 out of 10. Then I watched The Lighthouse, and rather than giving my thoughts, I think I'm just going to read my Letterboxd review for it. So, me until the very end of this film. Pattinson 1, that seagull, minus 0.5. Me at the end of the film. Those seagulls, 1. Pattinson, 0. I didn't give this a number rating because I don't know how to feel about it. I did give it a star rating, though, but I will not disclose that star rating here in this video. I did not particularly care for The Lighthouse. Maybe it was me, maybe something's wrong with me, or maybe, just maybe, something is wrong with the people who love this movie. I am only alleging that. I am not saying that is outright the case. I can understand why, from a cinematography perspective, you may enjoy this movie. I can totally understand that. I can understand from an acting perspective why you would like this movie, because guess what? I liked the cinematography in this movie, and I liked the acting in this movie. I did not like what happened. What? Then I watched The Zone of Interest. And this is a relatively divisive movie, because on one half of the spectrum, you have people arguing, oh, this does so much in showing so little. For those of you who don't know what The Zone of Interest is about, I'm not going to tell you what it's about, because YouTube won't, probably at least, will not like me telling you what the movie is about. So, if you want to know what it's about, go look up The Zone of Interest 2024. It might have been, no, it was a 2023 movie. A lot of people are going to argue with this movie that it is horrifying because you can't see what's happening. And then a lot of people are going to argue that you are minimizing what happened because you're not showing what was happening. Where do I fall on that spectrum? Well, like any good YouTube film reviewer, I'm gonna fence it because I can see both perspectives. I personally lean more towards the fact that the unseen is horrifying and just the heard is more horrifying, and if none of this makes sense to you, please Google The Zone of Interest, see what I am talking about. I would not say I enjoyed this movie. I don't think this is a movie necessarily to be enjoyed. It is a movie to make you think and make you contemplate. With that being said, I didn't give it a number rating either, because yet again, it is a very conflicting film that I feel like minimizes what is happening in the movie if you number rate the film, but that's just my personal opinion. Then I watched Parasite. I enjoyed this a lot. I was sleeping on this. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still a little sad that I hadn't seen this before. I'm probably gonna rewatch it sometime in the next month or two, just because I got so completely thrown for a loop, despite the fact, by the way, that I knew the twist of this movie because we analyzed the twist in media writing. I I had forgotten the twist, and that it's such a well done twist that just, if you haven't seen Parasite, you only probably need to skip one scene in Parasite, and I don't understand why the scene was there, but it was there, so you can, skip that. 8 out of 10 film for me personally. Will probably go higher next time I see it. Flight Risk. I am in the overwhelming minority, but I enjoyed this. Yes, I do in fact think that if I rewatched this, it would be like a 5 out of 10, because the suspense is what makes this movie good and what makes this movie entertaining. So, in my opinion, I would give this a 7.5 out of 10. Again, would probably not watch this again for quite a while. Then I watched Spiderman Homecoming. This is a lot of fun. It is a fun movie. It is fun Marvel. It is Marvel from, I would argue at least, the era where Marvel was not quite best. They were starting to convolute things a little bit, but I enjoyed this a lot. And if you haven't seen it, maybe go give it a try. Maybe go watch it right now. But finish the video first. 8.5 out of 10 for me personally. Then I watched The Incredibles. Brad Bird is amazing. I love this movie. 9 out of 10. Then I watched The Dark Knight Rises. I was sleeping on this one too. I saw a whole lot of movies in January that I was really sleeping on. The Dark Knight Rises is my first time watching this movie. It is a great conclusion to the trilogy. I do not care if people say it's a bit more jank. Yeah, it's a bit more jank than the first two, but it's still good. It's still a good story. It's still entertaining. It's still threatening. It's still well directed. It's still well acted, and I enjoyed it a lot. 8 out of 10 personally. And finally, I watched The Incredibles 2. I agree with the fact that this is not as strong as the first Incredibles, and I definitely agree with the fact that I think the villain could have been a bit stronger in this movie, and the twist could have been done a little bit better, but I still really enjoyed it, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. If you want to know what I watched last month in December, you can check that out there. If you want to subscribe, you can do that if you'd like. Ooh!